So hello everybody, my name is Wendell Halikami and my assigned topic is about what is utilitarianism in general. So utilitarianism is an ethical theory founded by Jeremy Bentham and developed and popularized by John Stuart Mill. As the term suggests, utilitarianism is founded on the principle of utility, which adheres to the belief that an act is good or morally right if it promotes happiness, and bad or immoral if it tends to produce pain.
One could say that stealing is morally wrong. For utilitarians, stealing in itself is neither bad nor good. What makes it bad or good is the consequences it produces. Like, for instance, a scammer stole millions of money to help those less fortunate. These instances are some of the certain cause of action that produce great benefits for society, but it would be clearly unjust in a way that the scammer stole money. Perhaps the greatest difficulty with utilitarianism is that it fails to take into account considerations of justice. Act of utilitarianism is an utilitarian theory of ethics which states that a person's act is morally right if and only if it produces the best possible results in that specific situation.
Everyone, welcome to What Do You Want to Know show. So our guest for today, she is a student, future engineer. So let us welcome Miss Griza. So hi Miss Griza. So I have few different questions. All you have to do is to pick one and answer it. Are you ready?
Yes, I'm ready.
So let's start that.
Explain consequentialism. Consequentialism is a class of normative teleological ethical theories that is morally right, the righteousness or wrongness of action that will produce a good outcome. It focuses on the consequences of action rather than the action itself. To evaluate an action, look at its consequences. So if the action will benefit more to the person rather than harm, then the action is good. But if the action will cause more harm rather than benefit, then the action is bad. Consequentialism is like the end justifies the means, which ends justify one's actions.
So thank you Miss Griza, and this is What Do You Want to Know show.
Hey everyone, let me discuss to you the other forms of consequentialism. But first, let me share this information. Consequentialism is based on two principles. First, whether an act is right or wrong, it depends only on the results of the act. Second, the more good consequences an act produces, the better or more right that act is. Different forms of consequentialism differ over what the good thing is that should be maximized. These are utilitarianism. It states that people should maximize human welfare or well-being, which they also call utility. Hence, it's just the same. Hedonism. Hedonism states that people should maximize human pleasure. Other forms of consequentialism take a more subtle approach. For example, stating that people should maximize the satisfaction of their fully informed and natural references. That's all. Thank you.
Knowledge time! It's your kachika, Erika May Briones. For today's chika, we'll talk about the hedonic calculus and its application. So what is hedonic calculus? Someone say that hedonic calculus is a happiness calculator. Well, it's slightly correct, as hedonic calculus calculate the rightness and the wrongness of an action based on how pleasure and pain occur. It introduced by Jeremy Bentham, as he believes that most of the people seek for happiness and avoid things that make them suffer. And he added that the one who will determine whether our action is good or bad is the consequence. And to measure it, he introduced the 7 criteria to define the morality in the action. First, intensity. How intense the pleasure and pain will be. Second, duration. How long will the pleasure and pain to last? Third, uncertainty and certainly the probability of the pleasure and pain to happen. Fourth, the nearness. How far the pleasure and pain occur. Fifth, fecundity. If it will cause the further sensation of the same kind of action. Sixth, purity if it will cause the further sensation of the opposite kind of action. Lastly, extend the number of people who will be affected. The application of the hedonic calculus will be explained by JC. Bye, Kachika!
Hi guys, my topic is all about hedonic calculus. In short, hedonic calculus is driven toward the common good of majority, meaning can act is good when it is beneficial. When it is beneficial for the majority, the morality of an act does not base upon the act itself, but upon the result that is generated from this said act. A best example of this. So the best example for this, guys, is the famous Robin Hood character who displays the empathetic person by extending his hands in helping those who are in need. But the things that he gave to help others are stolen. If you were to examine his act of stealing, you would have judged Robin negatively, right? But in hedonic calculus, Robin's act of stealing is overshadowed. Like, you know what I mean? But it's a fact of helping the majority.
Sorry sir, I fell asleep in your class. Um, Utilitarianism maxim. Okay, sorry, cut. So when we say utilitarianism, it is for the greatest good or the greatest happiness to the greatest number of people. So, in whatever situation you're in, you need to take you need to weigh the right action which will benefit more people. It is promoting the greatest good, and it will bring the least pain and bring more pleasure to the majority of people. One flaw in utilitarianism is that it requires you to commit an unjust action. Let's have an example. In my left side, I have two persons that are currently drowning and a single person in my right side. So I don't have the time, let's say example that I don't have the time to rescue them both. Hence, I will save those two even if it costs the life of a single person. Because basically, that's how utilitarianism act. So, what I just did there is an act of utilitarianism. So, you need to commit, you need to weigh to enable to do the greatest happiness, greatest good, which will bring the least pain and will bring more pleasure to the greatest number of people. So that is all, sir. Sorry again for sleeping in your class. Thank you.
Hi mga ga! We offer you today another trivia. Are you ready? So today's topic is about utilitarianism. Did you know that utilitarianism is one of the most powerful and persuasive approaches to normative ethics in the history of philosophy? The idea was brought by two classical utilitarians, namely Jeremy Bentham and John Stuart Mill. However, their idea differentiates from one another. Bentham considered only quantity of pleasure, but Mill considered both quantity and quality of pleasure. Bentham's theory applied the principle of utility to individual acts and situations directly. This means that some abhorrent acts were permitted. Do you agree, Cyril?
Yes, thank you, Miss Aryan. With that in mind, Mill suggested that the principle of utility should be used to determine more rules which govern utility. Though Mill's theory is more respectful of human nature, it makes pleasure even more difficult to calculate, as we have now to consider unquantifiable quality of pleasure as well as the quantity. It is important to note that the idea of utilitarianism evaluates actions based on their consequences. Everyone's happiness counts the same. When one maximizes the good, it is the good impartially considered. And my good counts for no more than anyone else's good. Thus, the reason I have to promote the overall good is the same reason anyone else has to promote the good. And that's it. That's it for today. Thank you for listening from our trivias. I hope you learned from it. Thank you and have a good day, guys.